Welcome back everyone to another video with me, Mystical Plays, and today we're going to go over how you can use glass to make your builds look a whole lot better. Not to stall too much, let's get straight to it. Over here I have a few examples of some houses, right, and we got some smoke coming out of the chimneys, right. What you might usually do, what I do usually as well, is I just put campfires up at the top of the chimney, maybe surrounded by some trapdoors. It looks quite fine, but the smoke doesn't really go too high. Now it can go higher if you put hay bales under the campfires, but that's not always an option. And also, as you can see, the particles, they aren't visible after a certain distance. Well, they actually are visible after, so well, never mind. But also, they just don't bend in the wind, so they just go straight up, and that can be quite annoying if you want them to bend in the wind. So what a lot of people do is they do cobwebs. This is a very old trick. A lot of people like doing this. And cobwebs, there's nothing wrong with them. They look like puffs of smoke, and you can bend them, and there's no clear border to them because they're very just kind of circular looking. So they work, but also they're not really the best thing to be using. I mean, they don't really look too good, right? I mean, they work, but they don't really look as good as they could. And also they're purely white, which doesn't really make much sense in the smoke kind of setting. So what you might want to do is glass. Now glass is great, the only problem is most people struggle with it. And today I'm going to give you some tips on how you can turn this into that. And that is, yeah, this is how you can do proper glass smoke, and then glass waterfalls as well, and then some other cool glass tricks. So make sure to stick around, smash the like button and the subscribe button and all the other buttons down there, as you can see. Leave a comment and let's break this down. So I think it might be better to point out the flaws in this than the actual way I did this, but what you'll notice is that yes, we have the wind blowing in this direction, so the wind's blowing that way, so it's coming from there, going there, and so we have a nice little curve, right? But the curve usually starts off very gradual rather than going like completely diagonal, and it sort of does, but like what you want to do with the curve is go straight up at the start and then slowly curve to the side and then go practically straight at the end rather than doing like a diagonal sort of thing. Also, you'll notice all of this glass here is all together in one, and it kind of doesn't really look too good, right? Like it's all together in one, and the smoke isn't dispersing anywhere, which doesn't really make too much sense, and just abruptly ends at the end. And it's very blocky looking. You should use some glass panes to sort of smoothen it out, as you can see over here. Because what I did here is that, as you can see at the start, it sort of goes up very slowly, but then it catches the higher wind, and then it sort of like curves further. And then at the end, it sort of breaks apart, giving you this kind of blurry feel, right? Like you can't really set an end. There's no border to where the smoke stops. Even from the top, you can see that, yeah, it's very dispersed. And I use a lot of glass panes to give it some extra detail, some extra depth. Because as you can see, the glass panes, they make a giant difference. And especially for down here, right? I mean, like this is centered to the chimney because of the glass panes. And I also put in a gradient because gradients are really, really cool. I made a video on gradients last video. You should check that out. It's up in the top right corner if you want to do that. Or you can check it out after you watch this video. Anyway, let's continue with this. Yeah, I mean, there's not really that much to say. What you should do is you should practice this. I think you should like sit down and try practice getting a good smoke shape. It also gets a bit wider at the end, you'll notice. Like it's more dispersed at the end, but it's also wider and bigger at the end. But again, you will notice that, I mean, just look at this giant mess. Like it's basically a ton of different shades and different shapes all mixed together to make this kind of effect. And I will admit, this smoke isn't the best thing I've ever made. I think you could definitely do a lot better. But this was my attempt at it, and I'm quite happy with it. I'm quite content with it. And so yeah, that's all about glass smoke. So basically just simulate real life smoke, right? Glass panes are for extra detail, extra depth, as you can see. And again, you just do a little bit of a gradient. And the thing about glass is it's really easy to do gradients because it's not just limited to a few different shades. Depending on how you use the glass, since it's transparent, you can have virtually infinite shades of glass. So that's all about smoke. I think we should go to its sort of counterpart, which is fire over here. Usually what you would do, you might do something like this, just fire by itself. That works really, really well. But if you want something bigger, something more visible from a further away distance, you might want to do something like this. Now, this is my first attempt at glass fire, and I think I actually did it quite well. The thing about fire is, what you have to remember is the lightest part of the fire, so like the center, is the hottest, and it's also the brightest part, right? So As you can see here on this fire, you will see that, yeah, the bottom of it, it's practically white because that's the hottest part of it. So here the hottest part is the center. So make the hottest part white / yellow, then go to orange, and then at the edges it's red, and then maybe even a little bit of black, as you can see for the smoke, these little particles coming out of the fire. And you can also just do smoke. You can make smoke above the fire. I didn't want to bother myself to do it though, because that's an extra work. And then also, especially for night, adding in end rods and stuff like that, some light source, really makes it stand out at night. So /time set midnight, and I'll show you what I mean. This looks so much better at midnight. Like, just look how cool that looks. That looks so cool at night. Because of the end rods. And you want to focus the end rods, or the light source, specifically more into the center rather than the outskirts, right? Because the outsides are meant to be the dimmest part. Doing this kind of glass work really ties into like color theory and mixing of different colors, which is quite a complex subject by itself. But you'll actually find that a cool fact is that in real life, the sun is actually white. And the blue light and the green light is kind of filtered out by the atmosphere, turning the sun yellow. And the same thing with glass is that, like, depending on what the backdrop of the glass is, depending on what's behind the glass, it can really, really change the way that the glass looks. So like here, the backdrop is the sky, so the glass has a little bit of a bluish tint to it, right? Something to keep in mind. We'll get to that a little bit later. Also with fire, you want to get this sort of kind of spiky shape out of it, like if, you know, like a hand or a leaf or something like that. Also in the center, the fire is usually the tallest, right? Because that's where the heat is most concentrated. But it does have like these jagged edges, right? Although a thing to remember is that fire always goes up, so it really needs to look like a fire is facing up and not facing down, like a droopy fire. That wouldn't work. Right, it always faces up. I guess that's all I'll tell you about fire. Next thing, we'll be moving on to waterfalls, and as you can see here, blue water waterfall works perfectly fine. It looks alright, nothing to complain about. You want something better, make a glass waterfall, and as you can see here, this is about 100 times better. Not really very practical for landing in or swimming up and down, but you're going to have to sacrifice that for the aesthetics of this, because as you can see, this looks really, really cool. Up here at the top, I used cyan glass and glass panes to give it a bit of a sort of darker feel right up here. But then as you get lower, the water gets more dispersed and it gets brighter. And then at the end, where it like hits the water on the ground, it becomes white. Also, what I really like about this waterfall is that it's so bright compared to these ones, because in Minecraft, the water is very, very dark. Well, it should really just be like bright. It should be as bright as this, because like water is meant to be see-through. Like as you can see here, it's meant to be see-through. In real life, it's see-through. Well, this is also see-through, but like very dark, like shade of blue. And yeah, I just think this looks really, really cool. It's also a bit more noisy with the glass panes again, like because that's the water flowing. Like it doesn't flow perfectly straight. I just think this waterfall looks quite cool. But yeah, that's all about waterfalls. It's basically the same rules that apply to this and that. So yeah, that's something to remember about waterfalls. And now we're going to go cover glass by itself. So as you'll notice here, I have like the three elemental sort of colors. I have red, I have blue, and I have yellow. And as you can see here, I put these colors together so that they kind of blend together. And as you can see, the same with paint, right? The same thing that you learn in first grade in school with paint. The same applies to glass here. So we have a little bit of a greenish tint here next to the blue and the yellow, and I put actual green glass above it to sort of compare. And then over here we have like a purplish tint / magenta tint, and I also put magenta glass up there to compare. But what you'll find is that the first layer of glass, so the first layer, which is yellow here, then it's blue, then it's yellow again, and then it's blue. The first layer is the one that makes the biggest difference. So over here I have the same thing but inverted. As you can see here, this one's a lot darker and a lot more blue because the first layer of glass is blue, and then it's yellow, and then it's blue, and then it's yellow. But again, by using different amounts of glass and different colors behind the glass, you can make different, like, practically infinite colors in Minecraft, making glass super useful for sort of changing the hue of some blocks if you want, you know, like tinted glass is really, really useful for this. And the more tinted glass you stack behind each other, it gives you this sort of swampy kind of effect, right? I did this here with this custom nether portal, as you can see. It's basically a ton of layers of magenta glass going in through here, and actually mixed in some pink glass as well, because I wanted a bit of a pinker hue as well. And it might be a bit too visible, but I don't really mind. And then also these end rods in here, they create a bit of light. They make it look a bit cooler and a lot brighter. And I learned this trick from The only, the amazing Green. You know who he is. If you don't, then look him up. He's really, really cool. He makes quality Minecraft videos, unlike this, but I try my best anyway. Yeah, maybe a nether portal is a bad example to use this for, but like maybe if you're making like a swamp and you want this sort of green water, then you could do that with just using some green glass layers. The same thing that I did here. And yeah, that's all I have to say about glass. Hopefully you guys learned something new, and I'll see you again in another video. All my tests are done, all my exams are done. I should have more time to do videos. Yay, okay, yeah, bye.